Hello everyone, welcome to this week's lap guide / race guide with Coach Dave in the house. Just been away a couple of days. We were racing the final event of the Blancpain Sprint Series GT World Challenge in Budapest. Things did not go according to plan, so taken a couple of days off from social media and YouTubing and stuff, so that's why this is a day late. But here we are at the Red Bull Ring, daily race B, around in Group 3 cars. I wanted to do a sort of a lap guide and then just show you how to attack and defend. So I ended up doing two pretty good races where I can demonstrate that. The second one, a little bit messy, but doesn't matter. So, okay, I decided to do the qualifying in the car of choice, which is the Lamborghini Huracan. Got within about, I think, 0.6 of a second of the top time, and I was just 0.3 off the top 10 leaderboard. So the time was competitive enough that I felt comfortable to actually do a lap guide. What you're seeing here isn't the actual qualifying time that I used in the races, but it's probably my cleanest lap of the day. So we're gonna get into it in a few seconds. Obviously you want to get a good run out of the last two corners, avoiding track limits as much as possible, and that's the tough part about this track, is avoiding those track limits in the qualifying and the races. Okay, so heading here down to turn 1 in the Huracan, braking at 100 meters down to second gear. As you get on the curb you can change up to third. I used second to rev out. Heading down here, so down this sort of not back straight, you'll see very soon whether or not you get a penalty. When you exit turn 1, avoid going over the bump on the left. Now braking here at just before the 100 meter board, you want to get all your turning done before the apex, so that when you're at the apex you're pointing straight towards the exit. It's got a slight banking in the middle which really can upset the car, especially when you're trying to get on the power. So if you have too much steering angle going in, you're going to have a lot of trouble getting on the power there. Here's a downhill right-hander. You want to brake just before the 100 meter board as well. You're going to be sliding into that corner. Very easy to hit other cars in the race laps, as you'll see soon. And then here, just braking just before the 50, stay as close to the apex as you can. This Huracan doesn't like curbs, it seems. So just be careful when you're touching the curbs. You want to, as you're on the curb, it helps to get on the power a little bit just to stabilize the car. This car doesn't seem to like to flow, which is when you're off the brakes and off the throttle. Okay, heading down to the last part of the lap here. Braking where the marshals never move. They seem to like their position. They're down into third gear. Maximize the curb on the exit without getting in track limits. And then you can bang it into second for the final right-hander just to get a quick bit of rotation, but make sure that when you're at the apex, you go into third gear. All that being said, I decided to give the Nissan a try in my first race, because last week Super GT smoked me in one of these things, and one of the main reasons for that I couldn't get close enough was the Nissan had so much acceleration. So I wanted to give it a go around this power track. This track is basically about braking and getting on the power, and just see if I could compete against the Huracan. So we started in second against a very fast Polish driver who I was struggling to keep up with in a prior race. Going down here, turn 2 or 3, depending if you count that kink as a turn. Braking a little bit earlier than normal just so you don't ram the guy up front, and trying my best to slipstream him as much as possible. The Huracan is actually very fast in sector 2, which I think is why it's doing good lap times. It's got good top speed as a car, but you do struggle with the rear of the Lamborghini. As you can see there, he is really trying to fight the rear, especially on the power, which does later catch him out a little bit. And the thing is, with the Nissan, you can use the curbs more. It's much more stable, much more body roll, as you saw there with going into that left-hander. But it does feel a bit heavier, and getting rotation around these sort of medium to high-speed corners is quite difficult. So once that Huracan is rotated, it can get on the power. It's pointing straight at the apex much sooner than the Nissan. But the Nissan does have pretty good acceleration and mid-range torque. So I would say that you'll see that my race kind of unravels itself, but generally I think that this Nissan has a chance. If you sort of mid-pack and you want to fight your way up the field, I wouldn't recommend going for the Lamborghini because it's so hard to handle when the rear is sliding. So definitely consider this Nissan. It's a pretty cool car. Anyway, heading here into turn 1, and I go slightly off track, and I think at this point here I get a penalty. So super frustrating. As you'll see my reaction here, I'm like, no! typical Red Bull Ring occurrence, and it's always so inconsistent. I never quite know where the track limits are there, because I'm pretty sure in a later race I go even wider than that, expect the track limits, and nothing happens. So I lose touch to the guy in front, and don't really pay attention to the guys behind, because we pulled such a big gap in the first 2 laps. But when we cut forward here to lap 4, you'll see that the green Lamborghini that's going to be coming up behind really does catch up a lot of time on this straight after turn 1, and coming up now to turn 2 or 3, whichever one you want to call it. He's right in my slipstream, and I didn't really anticipate him getting this close to me so quickly. So my attention has immediately turned from just sort of cruising home in P2 to now having to defend, and this is kind of why I chose this race as a highlight. So there's a couple of little tricks you can do on this track, because even if the guy gets a run on you, if you are smart enough and you don't miss your braking zones, there's an opportunity for you to defend your position to the finish line. It's not easy, and I often get it wrong. I often outbrake myself in these situations in the game, but if you do get it right, it's actually quite fun. So the key thing is you want to defend 2 things, or you want to protect 2 things. Your braking zone, you want to protect the inside, but you also need to protect the cutback. So that means that he brakes a little bit earlier than you go wide, he then cuts under you at the apex and gets the run down the inside to the next corner. So often that can happen if you leave too much space behind you going into the braking zone. So in this case here, he's still too far behind, so I lift the throttle, tap the brakes slightly so that I protect the cutback with my rear 3/4. So left rear is now defending him from actually getting underneath me, because my car is in the way. Here another situation, he's actually got quite a big gap, so I could theoretically brake in my normal line and just hope that he doesn't dive down the inside, but again I lift off, forcing him to the outside and over slowing at the apex, keeping as tight a line as possible, so that again protecting the cutback, forcing him to the outside for the next corner. This sort of defense mechanism or defense technique where you keep them on your rear 3/4 really does help, and I learned this in Gran Turismo quite a while back when I chose a similar sort of car deficit. I was in a car deficit situation where, I don't know, the faster car was quicker down the straight or something, and they were getting runs on me and going down the inside, and I just had no way of defending myself. So I started to tap off on the straights so that they were forced to go around the outside, and then trying my best not to miss the braking points going into the corner. So especially in turn 1, brake around 100 meters, you must have your reference point set up so that you know exactly where to brake, and then you can do that sort of defensive maneuver over there. So in the end, I crossed the line in 2nd place, and the guy from Poland has run off into the distance, and I'm seeking my revenge. So I switch now to the same car as him, which is the Huracan, and we try and give it a go. So here we are, switching to the Huracan, the car of choice around here. Good in sector 2, top speed. Start is pretty decent. I really immediately tuck into the slipstream. I get the gear changes perfect, as they say, start. And braking here for turn 1. I think he gets a little bit of snap oversteer on the bump. No, not necessarily. I just get a nice toe up to turn 2 or 3. And my main thing here was I didn't want to outbrake myself and hit him off the track. So braked a little bit early, and I'm just thinking, okay, if I can stay with him the first 3 laps, which will be quite fun, and like it will be good practice for me to not ram anyone, then we'll go from there. But as you can see, that all sort of unfolds here. So I had a feeling that he was going to brake early for this next downhill right-hander, because he was braking early for 2. And I did go to the inside, still on the brakes. He keeps squeezing me onto the grass. I had nowhere left to go. We touch a little bit. Now turning around here, and he cuts across me and then ends up spinning. If you watch the replay, you can see that my hands are pretty much turning to the right still, so I wasn't trying to spin him around, but he was just trying to get back on the line too quickly. He spins around. I knew that if I kept going, I'd probably be the one with the 5-second penalty, and at the end of the day, it was him that I wanted to race, because he seemed to have a lot of pace around here. I wanted to see what I can learn from him, so hit the brakes, waited for him to go, and I figured, hey, let's try and fight our way through the field. In the end, this guy seems to think that I did it on purpose or something, but that wasn't the case. So this is going to be our sort of main race of focus, waiting for a move that we can get done here to try and overtake him, and for me it's a victory if we manage to pull it off. I'm not too concerned that we're having to fight our way through the field. I'm actually pretty happy that there's a little race going on between myself and this guy. Who, by the way, drives really well. I'm not criticizing him at all, but I think in that specific situation, I was surprised that he cut across. I didn't anticipate it because, you know, we were both got out of that turn, that downhill right-hander, relatively cleanly after the touch going into the apex, and I thought that everything was done. So I try and go down the inside here. He leaves just enough space for me and manages to keep the momentum around the outside and still stays in front. Very well done by him, and I couldn't get the move done there. So okay, we have to try again. There are cars in front of us who sort of clear the way. Some of them get penalties, and some of them just sort of go off on their own. I didn't actually touch him there, but it was close again. So I'm still, even though I'm trying to brake earlier, it's still too late relative to the way that he's going through that corner. So I really have to adjust that when racing around this track. And that downhill right-hander is really easy to hit other people. He's super fast through this sector 2, and initially, when I was in the Nissan, I thought it was just related to the Huracan, but it turns out that he's able to get the rear rotated much quicker than me into the apex in the medium speeds. So when he gets to the apex, he's pointing straight towards the exit, or straighter, and is able to get on the power sooner. Okay, so the guy in front of us, he's got his penalty. As the title of this video explains, everyone gets a penalty around Red Bull Ring. It's just a matter of time. And I'm not sure if you noticed, the previous lap we both ran wide over this yellow bump and didn't get penalties. So again, if one of you in the comments can explain to me why that is, you know, why is it that sometimes you go over, you get a penalty? Like, where is the line there where it starts to detect that there's a penalty that needs to be rewarded? Okay, so this Mercedes here, he slows down. Again, trying my best to do as clean a race as possible. I think I get it right going into this turn now, this downhill right-hander. Braking much earlier than normal, sort of around 150, 140, just so I don't hit the guy. And he seems to be sliding quite a lot more than me on the exit, so I'm starting to sense maybe if I can get a run into this left-hander, then that's where I want to get the move done, because it's really difficult to defend through here and get the cut back. I think he would be much wiser to my sort of rear three-quarter protection move. So because just the style of his driving and everything, I think the effect of that cutback wouldn't be so bad for him, and he'd be able to get me down the next straight much easier than the guy I was racing earlier. So I need a long corner to be able to attack and get the inside and then defend on the inside much longer, so that he doesn't get the undercut and nail me at the next corner. So because of that oversteer, I'm now thinking, okay, I have to get as close as I can leading into that corner and get a really good exit out of one. Now in the slipstream, someone is going to cut the grass on the right there. I think Bonus was looking for some bonus eggs or something. No luck over there. Braking now for turn 2 or 3, if you're counting that kink there. Someone can correct me in the comments for what that corner number actually is, and then I promise you I'll never call it 2 or 3 again. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, here's the opportunity. Don't brake too late, because you don't want to punt the guy again. And do your best to see, I mean, if he does get any snap oversteer, be prepared to go around the inside from the next corner. So here we go, he gets on the curb, a little bit of snap. I was close enough, had a really good run, slightly later apex than normal, and then braking down to the inside of this long left-hander. Really difficult in the Huracan specifically, because the rear just wants to slide the whole time. Also through here, I was really struggling through this little section to try and keep the rear stable, so that if I did get on the power too aggressively, I didn't lose the rear too much and lose momentum up the hill. Braking here again for where the marshals never move. I wish that this game had a little bit more of a dynamic element to it in terms of the shadows and the movement of the spectators and marshals, but you know, it is what it is. I think that they're having to deal with the low processing power with the PlayStation. Got a little bit of lag here from the recording, so I do apologize for that. My PlayStation seemed to be my laptop was overheating, and it was affecting the video feed. So soonish I will be getting the PC, and then I hope a lot of these problems will go away. It's just because I'm on the road most of this month, except for 2 days each week, it makes no sense to get the PC when it will be probably likely, considering my luck, it will be delivered on a day that I'm not here. So I'm delaying it till the first week of October, where I will be here, and I'll be able to finally start doing some iRacing and Assetto Corsa Competizione. I was hoping also to go to the Gran Turismo event at the Red Bull Ring for real, or the Red Bull Hangar, sorry, but I will be racing this weekend in the Italian GT, as my co-drivers are preparing for the Nations Cup, which will be at Vallelunga, the track we're racing at this weekend. So we're using this Italian GT round as a test session for them, and because it's an endurance race, I will be in the car as well, so that's going to be quite cool. And then next week I have a really cool race coming up, which I will announce in my newsletter or something. Anyway, we managed to keep our position, and everything went relatively smoothly. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. I hope you guys enjoy racing around here. Thank you to all my Patreon subscribers and to my channel sponsors. Until next time, I will catch you around the next lap. Cheers.